Book club, book club, book club, book club.
You didn't even write a theme song for it.
I fine. I'll write a theme song for book club. It's just book club over and over and over again. I'm also disappointed. I gotta figure out how to do captions for both of us in the future, so that can be a thing that exists. But where's my cheat sheet? This is what I want.
So, captions. Yesterday,
Mm.
I was working, and I gotta ask people for IDs.
Yeah, yeah.
And a deaf guy came to the door. This has nothing to do with book club, but he got mad at me for asking for his ID.
What?
And I know the sign alphabet, so I was just I don't know why this guy was getting so angry, but I was just like ID. This guy just would not give me his ID, and he just kept pointing his his ears and mouth as if he was deaf and mute. And I'm just like, I get it, I understand.
But you're also using sign language.
Yeah, I'm like, I know how to sign ID.
That's it. That's all you really needed.
Yeah, and he just wouldn't give it to me. And I was
Oh
like,
well.
okay, no.
I mean, what are you gonna do at that point? You can only do so much.
Eventually, he did, and then he walked in, he looked around and left, and I was like, was it really worth it, bro?
Yeah, seriously. I mean, you gotta ID everybody, right? Right, Kratos?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, book club book. The Emperor's Soul by Brandon Sanderson. Do you want to read the synopsis, or do you want me to read it?
Go for it. I don't have it up.
Okay, I do. So we're good. So I'm just going to read where did I yanked this off of Google because I was behind on my bullshit. What is new? But Shay is a thief and practitioner of magical forgery who has been arrested and sentenced to death. The Emperor's corrupt advisors offer to free her if she agrees to forge a new soul for the Emperor, who has been left brain dead by an assassination attempt. She agrees, but plans to escape. So, what'd you think, Dave?
Initially, I actually kind of liked it. To be honest,
Did that
I thought
change?
it was
Did you stop liking it?
no. I I just wasn't sure if I would. I thought I wanted to read something by Sanderson because you were hyping him up, and I was like, well, let's start with something small because I don't really want to delve into something if I don't like his writing. So I enjoyed it for what it was.
Yeah, that's fair. No, I liked it. I liked the brevity of it. I liked kind of the magic he brought with it, if that makes sense. But we'll talk about that later. I liked a lot of it. I think there were shortcomings, but I think those are kind of secondary to the strengths that kind of came with it. If that makes
I
any
think some
sense.
of those are just a byproduct of the nature of a short story or novella.
Yeah, I think you're right. I have some of those points brought up later as well. So we'll talk about them when we come around to them. I'm not super stressed about. I'm not gonna come and ravage this book because of the length of it, kind of thing.
Right.
But I guess that kind of makes me think about the style of writing. I didn't find it terribly distinct by any means. I don't think there was any real thing that popped out and oh, this was a Brandon Sanderson novella, if that makes any sense. But I guess maybe I'd have to read more about him to figure that out, because I think it's both of our first dives into it, if I remember right.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm not super stressed about trying to figure out oh, well, this wasn't that good, blah blah blah. It was good for the most part.
Yes.
Did you find that only having one setting throughout the book made it a little bit difficult? Did you find it easy? Did it make a difference?
I didn't even really think about it until the end, to be honest.
Me neither.
I knew going into it that I'd get through it pretty quickly, and so I didn't really think that it needed anything more than that. I think if you tried to just there's no reason for any kind of author to just create extra environment for the sake of creating something.
Agreed. I think it actually became kind of a strong suit in the sense that it's okay, they showed whenever they talked about her changing the room and like her stamps, it's like, oh well, I rewrote the history of the vase or of the flooring of like whatever. Like I think that kind of played into how well she like how well versed in her craft she was. So it's not a matter of like, it's like it kind of helped create the character that Shay was, and so she was able to like, or Sanderson was able to really express that Shay is like a master of what she does, because like the whole room by the end, if I remember right, was turned into like a nice little like suite. It went from like a single like cell with a bed and like a desk, from what I discerned, to a like nice like, oh, you got a fireplace, a mantle, the window is stained glass, or not stained glass, the whole 9 yards. And I'm like, okay, like I didn't think about it much until like maybe just now, but it's like I kind of really picked up on like how effective Shay was at what she was doing. Kind of gave me confidence that what she was doing was gonna work to bring back Ashravan. I got it right.
Let's see, is that how you pronounce it?
I think so. I'm not 100% sure.
Ashravan?
Yeah. I got it on the bottom of the sheet of the character names. It's just pronouncing them. Like, I'm not sure about Gautona.
Empire.
And Zhu? Zoo? Okay.
Yeah, there weren't a lot of characters, but it was fine.
Yeah.
Also, I think it speaks to Sanderson's ability as a writer to give you a place with such limitations and still make it interesting. So I think a lot of times when you're working in a confined area, it could very quickly devolve into something that people find boring. So
yeah, there was no like setting to kind of play off of to give like a description.
To constantly be adding something to it, as you mentioned, just, I think that was key for him. So that, I mean, I'm sure it's something where you're like, well, you can't just have a dark room for 100 days. So.
Yeah. No, I thought it worked well, and like it like based on the story, it made sense. Why would they put her anywhere else but like this dank little like dungeon room? They think she's like this crazy practitioner of magic that's like forbidden. Like why would they give her any kind of like leniency? But what did you think of Shay as a character? Or I guess any of the other characters, like it doesn't have to be Shay. Like, did you find any of them like particularly notable?
I do think that was one thing that's kind of lacking in this book, actually, is there's not a ton of character development just because of time outside of Shay. So there were some interesting people. I thought that Gautona,
I think. Gautona. Gautona. I was gonna mention him myself, regardless of how you pronounce his name.
Definitely somebody who I think I would be interested to see more of, but you still didn't really get like a ton of information because people were keeping secrets from her and not really giving her a lot of information about everything. But I definitely thought that she was interesting, and there was some complexity at certain parts throughout the book where, she has some internal strife and struggle with what she wants to do and like her identity basically as a forger. So yeah, I thought it worked pretty well.
Yeah, no, I'd agree on a lot of that. Like, I did find that there was a lot of like maybe infallibility. I don't know if that's actually a word. Is quite what I'm looking for in terms of what I think here. I think that she might have been like a little like, if I were to think of it as like a video game character, she would have been overpowered. Like, okay, she can like basically twist reality to her own will. Like, especially if we start talking about the end where she's like, oh, she's surrounded by, like, I get like the kind of hook at the end was like, oh, the blood sealer failed to renew the seal, and so now Shay is free in the castle and imprints the soul and whatever, and she's got to fight the skeletons at the end.
Yeah.
And so it's a little like the fact that she gets her stamp and she just becomes, I forget what the name of like the warrior Shay is, but like she just
Shazon.
she becomes Shazan and becomes this immediate like fantastic fighter, and like.
Well, that was the point of the essence marks, though.
Yeah, and I get it. I think that plays into it plays well into the magic that Shay has and like what she kind of can use for power and how she exists in the world. But at the same time, like it's like okay, like there's been a very clear-cut solution to most, or maybe not most everything, but it felt like when you're hitting that real like exciting part of the novella, it doesn't derail itself by like being very an easy solution, but it never really felt like it was an actual issue, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like during the fight scene, some of the reviews I read says that Sanderson drags on fight scenes like regularly, so maybe that could be it. But I found that fight scene was very anticlimactic. It's like you're fighting 3 skeletons. Like in terms of like maybe for the sake of fun, we'll call it turn economy. Like that would be a tough fight. Like regardless of skill level between the 3, like they essentially could outnumber you very quickly. But Shazan was able to like handle them effectively and quickly, and it becomes very much a non-issue.
I do agree, because at one point she figures out how to defeat the skeletons, and then all of a sudden, but it was just one, and you're like, okay, but then all of a sudden she's surrounded by like 3 or 4 or whatever, and you know, like it took you whatever to figure out how to beat one, and then all of a sudden you just beat all of them. I don't know. Yeah, it was just, it did seem a little rushed. So.
Yeah, I found it was just a little pushed through, because then she goes and fights Zoo, like the head of the guards, and I did not find that, I don't remember anything from it. I didn't really feel like it had a lot to offer in those fight scenes, if that makes sense.
Well, she used her forgery traps, if I remember correctly.
What did she
to deal with him?
Okay, I know initially that she sunk, like he fell through the floor when she was escaping, like, and he was gonna kill her right off the bat.
Yeah,
but I don't recall anything from when he comes back and she essentially like, or Shazan defeats him rather than Shay.
Yeah, no, that's because it really didn't. I don't remember there much more to it other than he just fell for the traps and he just bounced out of there. So
yeah, like it I don't know. I feel like Zoo could have been played up a lot more. Like he clearly had a vendetta against her. Like he came kind of like, it felt like he was shoehorned in, if that makes sense.
And also, another thing is like they hyped him up so much about how he was like this killer and
he's this like big tough guy. Like he's not.
Yeah,
gonna be able
like there was a mention earlier in the book about how, I forget who it was. It was like, well, you should be lucky that he doesn't get a hold of you and do like what he's good at with you and all this other kinds of stuff. As if like he was really going to be a menacing, character, and then all of a sudden it was just kind of over.
Yeah, he didn't really play up to be a whole lot. Like that, I guess that kind of plays back into the whole like characters could have gotten a lot more development.
Yes,
but I don't know. Maybe that could also play into like Frava and how she was very tried to be manipulative through the whole thing. Like, I don't know. I'm kind of spitballing here off the top of my head now that we're talking about it. So just correct me if you think I'm wrong on any of this. Like, but it could be that like, okay, Frava played him up to be a lot more like vicious and like angry and tough than he actually was. But
okay, that would make sense, I guess. Yeah, because she wants Shay to be scared.
Mm-hmm. But like,
yeah.
I might be giving too much of a pass to Sanderson on this one in the sense that like it seems a little too contrived to be for real, if that makes sense. Like I don't know if that makes like, because Frava wasn't played up nearly as much either. Like I don't know nearly enough to be like, yeah, you know what, Frava's the one who was like just playing this guy up and he really turned into be like a whole lot of nothing.
Right.
But I would believe more so that the characters just could have used a little more development. But then I think if you're starting to develop like secondary characters and tertiary characters, like it moves from a novella to like a novel, and I'm gonna assume that wasn't the goal of this because the Elantra series is not convoluted, but it's long. There is a lot of books in that. Like there's trilogy after trilogy. Like I think it's at 3 or 4, if not like 15 total books in the universe. But I think there could have been more done with them, like particularly with like Zoo, and then like Frava seemed. Excuse me. At the beginning of the book, I thought Frava was going to turn around and be like the main villain here, like truly like the menace. But it really didn't turn out to be the case. Like I feel like for the first like third of the book, like it's like, oh, Frava's like running the show. Frava knows what's going on. Frava's going to make sure that there is another forger checking over Shay's work. And I guess like there was still like a mastermind situation, but Frava really did not play out to be a whole lot.
It's once again something where I think that's somebody that we could end up seeing farther down the road if, say, they expanded on this, which I'm not entirely sure is something that happened. So,
yeah. Well, I know that there's like, I feel like this might be an isolated event in itself, but it could be like a larger event in the universe, if that makes sense. Like, because like the Elantra series is like a huge chunk of books. So, like, you would imagine that, like, if it's in the same setting as the rest of the books, the death of the Emperor's wife would be a huge thing. And he's gone for, like, what, 99 days, 98 days?
Yeah.
Like, that could be something that you could really play into in a book where it affects characters indirectly, and I think it'd be really interesting. But this kind of seems, and now that I'm thinking about it, more of a, like, supplement to other Brandon Sanderson books. But again, I'm spitballing, so like I need to read more Sanderson to like be fully aware of that. But I still like enjoyed, outside of like some of the big main culprits here of the setting and like the character development, like there was still a lot of good in this book. Just to make sure I'm not like entirely just shitting on it for like 10 minutes.
No, I mean like you're critiquing it.
Yeah.
But I mean we've both already said that we enjoyed the book overall, so.
Yeah. That's fair. And I mean, like, whatever. We're still spitballing this show for the most part. I don't mind having, like, hiccups if we bounce around a little bit. We're technically only on, like, episode 5. Not even. What do you think about the magic? And I guess, I don't know if this would be, like, I put it down in my notes as magic and Elantris? I'm not sure. But I'm wondering if these might be more, like, between like blood sealing and forging might have been something more reserved for these books rather than like the main world as a whole.
Well, forging is universal, I think, for this series. So.
Oh, is it?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. What about blood sealing? Do you know?
I'm not sure, but I mean, like I know that they mentioned the blood sealing, and obviously, like it failed, and somebody forgot to do it, which is how she's escaped and whatnot. But there wasn't really a lot going on into explaining that, and also like the foraging obviously was explained pretty well. I thought maybe I missed something with the blood sealing, but like it was just kind of one of those like, oh, we can seal with blood. It was just kind of like one of those hand waving things to me. It felt like where
because it didn't really.
Oh yeah, you can totally just like lock somebody in their room by sealing their door with blood. Okay, sure.
Well, I think it would be. I mean, it wasn't so much like she was forced to be in there, but it was a matter of like she's stuck because it was like a signal to him. But
yeah, I did get that at the end. Yes,
yeah,
because she like said that like he knew where she was.
Yeah.
She was trying to escape, and then she did her essence marks or whatever to try to get away from that, and came to beg her on the street or whatever. So yeah, but I don't know. I was fine with the forging. I thought it was really cool, actually. I hadn't obviously there's a lot of like manipulation in magic in a lot of books or fantasy, but the way that he went about it with the forging. I would be interested to see a little bit more detail on that because I think that obviously forging material things one thing. I even though they did go into a lot of detail, it was still a little bit lacking to me in that I wasn't entirely sure. Like, I understood you had to get to the backstory of people, you had to understand who they were, all that. But still, there were still a little bit of questions about how she was doing a soul that maybe I missed or they weren't fully explained.
I don't know. What do you think you were missing? Because like maybe we can figure it out real quick.
I understood she had to like. I mean, she had like 700 of these soulstone whatever they were.
Like what she was literally using to engrave the.
Yeah, but and she did mention several times that like she her forgery probably wasn't going to be perfect, and there's going to be certain things about the character that were different from their actual being and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But like, what was she doing to those to get to that point? I didn't really understand what she was actually doing in the forging.
I think it's a matter of like that's what the actual stamps were made out of. It was made out of the soul stone.
No, I get that. But
okay.
What was she doing to the soul stone?
Carving into them.
But carving what?
I'm not sure. What I understood from that was that she was carving like that's kind of how it worked. Like, you know how in like tabletop, particularly D&D, you have like verbal components, like to spells. Like, I figured that this was just going to be like a written component. Like, you just have to write it in the appropriate way, and that's what this means. And you're writing a language basically into the soul of the emperor, if that makes sense. It's still a little convoluted.
She's like programming him.
Yeah, that's probably a better way to put it. Like, she essentially reprogrammed the emperor to be himself.
I guess that makes sense, but
yeah, it's still a little convoluted, especially because it's not something you think of.
So it's a spell of sorts, but just like carved.
Yeah, and like the blood sealer did the same thing, but like instead of using the soul stone, he used blood, and like that he draw the seal on every day. And like renew that, and that's why I guess she had to redo that too. Like the soul stones are only so like finite powerful, and therefore, like that's why he's got to wear the plate, and that's why they have to reapply the stamps every single day, stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, like to me, it didn't really distract from me. I just I was like subconsciously, like I was just like in the back of my head, I was like, I'm just going along with this, but I would like a little. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I would have liked a little bit more
really
myself.
Didn't take anything away from the story to me. I just personally maybe missed something there.
That's fair. I mean, it happens. Whatever. Like, it's the nature of reading books. Like, we're not going to be picking up every detail. But yeah, like I feel like it could have been explained a little bit more. But I feel like that's something left for like a beginning novel of the series, because technically this is not the first book of the series itself, so
right, of course.
But do you think you could make forging work in a tabletop setting? I think blood sealing could.
No, I actually think you could. One thing is, like, I mean, you have downtime.
Yeah.
So you could definitely do it during downtime. Also,
that's true.
I think, I mean, like, if you have characters that take a week off or do whatever else, or even if, because there was definitely things that she could forge in a day.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I definitely think you could, or you could just have people that do it. Actually, as
like, I think it could be.
It would be tough because but like, how much? Like, she said she had to do 700 of those in a month or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's definitely things that people could be working on throughout the course of a campaign.
Yeah. And I'm like, now that you mention it like that, I think I agree with you in the sense that it's like, okay, like, it doesn't have to be like these like great magnificent works for it to still be deceptive. Like, you don't need, like, you could like have a stamp ready, like, oh, this tree is now whatever, like, you rewrote its history, it never existed, so now it's out of the way. excuse me, because like she did those like on the side, like so I'd imagine you just can't start as like a low level forger, if that makes sense, to make it useful. Like you'd have to start a campaign at like higher levels, like just to be able to use it more effectively, I guess. But I still think it'd be an interesting espionage thing. Like if it's not like a combat heavy campaign, like then you don't need what's it called? Like you don't need to have like a soul stone to turn you from Shay to Shazan. You could just have a soul stone that's like, oh well, now we're gonna dupe this guy, like she was starting with in the book, where she's just a thief, and she's like, oh well, I'm here, like I'm just gonna like you give them the duplicate that you forged into like what she did with the painting. Like here's the duplicate, and but I have the original. I think it'd be interesting to do. Maybe as like a solo campaign thing, so you can just dish out that time whenever the character needs it. But
right,
I'm not sure. I feel like it would take just a little bit of touching. Like you throw that into like most settings. I think it'd work for Pathfinder and like 5e, like the big ones, the easy ones, if that makes sense. I guess we already talked about if we'd want to see it expanded in other novels and whatnot. Would you read more by Sanderson?
Yeah, for sure, actually.
Yeah, no, I don't think I'd be like jumping to get a new book by him, but like I think it was still pretty good.
Yeah, no, I really didn't find anything bad about it, really.
No.
So
No.
And I thought his writing was pretty good. I mean,
it was concise for the most part. I enjoyed that, where it's like maybe that's because it was a novella itself and there was not a ton of action, but like I figured there was always something like happening. And maybe that's because I see it in my own writing where I'm not the best at always progressing the story. Like, I do give a lot of exposition. But maybe that's because there was no exposition to give. Or little exposition to give. Would you recommend him to someone else?
So far, yes.
Okay, fair. I'm kind of on the fence about that one. Because, like, on one hand...
I would read another book of his and be like, hey, you know what? I enjoyed this book. I wouldn't like push him with somebody because I haven't read enough of his stuff, but I'd just be like, I read one of his books and I enjoyed it, and so give him a try.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking too. I'm like, okay, like I probably wouldn't, because I've heard good things. Like Sanderson's got a zillion billion books out there. Like I'd imagine he's like good at what he does, if that's the case. But like I'm not gonna sit there and be like, this is the book you should start with. Like that's not really like what I found this book to be, or like I'm not dead set on him. He's not my Joe Abercrombie. Like we still need to read a book by him because he is my favorite author by a country mile at the moment. But it's just a matter of like, here, like this is the type, like you're gonna get like a unique twist on high fantasy, and I think that Sanderson can offer that. And then I think we also discussed if we would read more in the Elantris universe, because it's kind of the nature of reading a novella in the middle. Like I'd probably pick up like, a lot of people are saying Mistborn is something that should be picked up. The first book of Mistborn. Pardon me?
Yeah, I think that if I were to read more of his, I'd want to start at the beginning of this universe.
Yeah. I'd want to give it a better shot from square one. And so it builds a little bit more. And I think having the knowledge of this book would help a lot with that, actually. So it's like, you might be able to pick more at some nuances, rather than sitting there and like focusing on forging itself and like trying to figure out like how the world itself exists, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like I think this may have actually been a good start for us, possibly. I don't want to commit to it just yet. I want to do the 1-star review thing and end the show with that, but I didn't find that the 1-star reviews were particularly funny.
Neither did I.
Like, it took me like half an hour to find the 2 reviews that I found. It's like, maybe Sanderson's just too big of a character to have people really dissing his books too hard. But we'll probably pass on it. I'm going to keep doing it because I think has the ability to be funny. But like the one that I found on Goodreads is just, I don't enjoy the magic because it's contrived. But I found the magic itself was explained not like super well, but in the length given and the uniqueness of it, like I feel like it makes sense. It makes sense on like how a wizard learns magic. Like he's like, in his other books, the magic feels organic, almost biological, like it could actually exist. I feel like
Right.
this could exist. Like, I don't. Everything was kind of like given a reason for the most part. Like, it's like how a wizard will learn a spell. Like, he's going to have a spell book open and ready, and it's like, this is where what I need for this spell, puts it together, and that's how he casts, or how she casts. But there's no really funny 1-star reviews, which is
No, I found that a lot of reviews were people saying it was boring and they just stopped reading, and I'm like, this book takes like 2 hours to read.
yeah, seriously.
It's not, like how bored did you get in an hour for you to just stop reading it? Like I don't know. Like,
I picked up the ebook for it. It's like
I
150
feel
pages.
like they were just looking for something to complain about, maybe, because if you, granted, I will say one of my least favorite books of all time that I've read is a short story novella, but and I got really bored with it. So I guess to each their own. But
Yeah.
uh,
I'm wondering if just they're following that same gripes that we had, where it's like, oh well, like there's no setting and there's like very little character development. Like, I want more of that, and it's like, all right, like, fair enough, but I don't know. I still thought it was pretty good. I'd read more by Sanderson. I'd like, maybe we'll do another one on the show, but I mean, one book a month, it's hard to like pick too much up here. But I believe
anything else you wanted to mention about it?
No, but I am going to go ahead and shill book club a little bit, because I'm going to record this one. I'm going to put it up mostly raw because my editing skills are not there, but that's fine. So that was our book for November of 2019, Brandon Sanderson's The Emperor's Soul. For December, we are reading The Hedge Knight by George R.R. Martin, which is another novella. I think it's about 80 pages, less than 100. Should be a quick one. We're trying to be a little, keep people available for the holidays and whatnot. But I'm still looking for book recommendations for the rest of 2020. So this is a shout out to both anybody who's here right now and anyone interested, and as well as you, Dave. If you got something you want to read, let me know. I prefer it's the first book in a series, but now we are done.
Okay.
4 books. This is our 3rd book, actually, because we didn't do one in October. So we've read The Black Company by Glenn Cook, The Six of Crows by Lee Bardugo, The Emperor's Soul by Brandon Sanderson, and this month will be The Hedge Knight by George R.R. Martin. If you would like us to pick up one of your favorite fantasy books, you can find me on Twitter at Writ Malfunction. Dave is on there as well, at LA Kings Dave. Tweeted either of us. Jump in our Discord, which I believe is available through my... Oh, it should be available through my Twitter, but I will send anyone an invite who wants to be there. Or also just ping me on Twitch chat whenever you catch me live. Twitch.tv/writmalfunction. RYTMALFUNCTION. I almost spelled my own name wrong. LMAO. Is anything you want to shill, Dave?
English is hard. So.
English is super hard. I give people a lot of credit for learning it. Like, I'm going to stop recording real quick, though.